Did you have an outcome in the first time? Did you
Yes,
feel you did? You experienced
I did.
positive
I was like,
benefits?
holy cow, this stuff is amazing. I haven't had this much energy since I was like 15.
Yeah. More than ever recently, I'm
Yeah.
getting comments on, you look so young, you look so young. And
Yeah.
I'm like, it's the NAD, guys.
Yeah.
I've been
No,
doing
it
it for like a
really
year
is.
now.
Your skin, like after the NAD, I remember I'd look in the mirror and be like, oh
Yeah,
my
you
God, my
glow.
skin looks like 5-year-old skin.
Yeah.
Like it's glass,
Yeah.
NAD. And this is kind of what really was my spark into being like, yes, I need that.
Hmm.
So NAD is something that naturally occurs in our bodies. We have it. And as we age around our early 20s, it starts to decrease. Our supply, if you will, in our body starts to decrease.
Yes.
And so it's a substance in your body that clears out the old mitochondria in your cells.
Hmm.
And so when it does that, your cells can function at their optimal state.
I'm your host, Dr. Meg, founder of Holistic Health Code, and today's episode is a special one. Joining me is Marissa Meade, an entrepreneur, influencer, and wellness advocate. We're here to talk about your experience with NAD. But before we dive in, I'd love to hear more about your health journey in general. I know that this has been a part of your life for a very long time. Please tell us
Mhm.
how you were introduced to holistic health. I don't think I've ever shared this with you before, but I was a medical director for a company at the time that was doing IV infusions in the home.
Yeah.
And I can recall you booked a visit with them, and we were so excited that they were going to your house and we were going to see like inside your world. And that's how I first got connected with you,
Yeah.
but not in a way, obviously, that we are now.
Mhm.
But I was introduced to your work and what you did and your
Mhm.
influence online. But
Mhm.
what's your perspective of how we met and how you
Mhm.
got integrated into the clinic?
Yeah, I think it's a little similar. So I had the IV company reach out to me and want to book a drip and like share it on social. And I was like, great, let's do this, whatever. Girl came and then we did it a couple times, like
Yeah.
maybe 2 or 3. And
Yeah.
I want to say it was during like the second visit. It wasn't the first where, she's sitting there. So we're talking the whole time. This is like 2021. So kind of like post all the COVID things. And we were just talking and she's in the medical field. And I mentioned something about, yeah, I'm really into like more holistic and functional medicine type of work. I really want to find a functional medicine doctor. And she was like, oh my God, like my friend, Meg has a clinic and this and that, and started talking. And I was like, oh, I'd love to be connected with her and kind of find out more. And I think from there, I don't know if she connected us
Yeah.
or
I
gave me
think
your
so.
Instagram or something along those lines. And I was like, yes, I need someone. Because the person that I was seeing back in my early 20s during that whole journey that I was just talking about, wasn't really a fit for where I was at that point. I was looking for something a little bit more all inclusive and
Hmm.
really deep dive.
Whole body.
Yes. And so we got connected and our first visit was virtual. We did a
Hmm.
Zoom. You didn't even have the
I
clinic
didn't have the clinic.
in
Yeah.
Farmington yet.
No.
And so I just did like a virtual,
Hmm.
which is so convenient, by the way, to be
Yeah.
able to do virtual with Dr. Meg. If you're
Yeah.
out there, you can be anywhere and
Yep.
still
You're so
see
right.
her. So yeah, I did the virtual and was like, okay, like the consult or whatever, and was like, okay, like
Let's do it.
let's do it. Let's dive in.
And then from there, we did a series of tests.
Million.
Honestly, I think like 5 test kits at once. We did your
Yeah.
micronutrients, hormones, GI panel. What else did we do? Tox screen.
Yep. The Dutch, is that the hormone?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
That's the Dutch hormone
Yeah.
panel.
We may have done another one. I just remember going to the blood work appointment and there
Yeah.
was like no joke, 37 vials in the tray. And I looked at the lady and I was like, those are all for me.
People are like,
And
who is
she
this
was like,
person ordering these
yeah,
labs
the thing printed out and it was like
a mile
the
long?
CVS receipt coming out of
Oh my
the,
gosh.
8 yards or whatever. Oh my gosh. But yeah, we started uh, did all my testing
Yeah.
and just deep dived. And I was like, I really came though knowing
Yeah, you
what
did.
my goals were. And I
Hmm.
think, maybe not everyone does, and that's totally okay. Everyone's journey
Right.
looks very different. Because I had already had a lot of experience in this type of field and also just my own personal education. I've deep dived into a lot of health things over the years. I knew kind of the path that I wanted to take. And so it was very easy and natural for us. And I was like
Yeah.
ready to jump in right away and just was like, yes, I'm ready to tackle all of it, you
You
know?
definitely had more direction than most of our patients that we help, but that just speaks to your upbringing and
Mm-hmm.
self-awareness. So you had definitely a list of things that you wanted to tackle. I
Yeah.
think initially it was more hormone
Mm-hmm.
based concerns, and we did the
Yeah.
Dutch test, and then we did a whole bunch of other tests after that. But the care plan, you had a really easy time adapting because you were doing a
Mm-hmm.
lot of it already, food as medicine, movement as medicine,
Mm-hmm.
and then integrating your supplements or really just streamlining your supplements because you
Mm-hmm.
were taking supplements when I met you.
Yeah. Right. Definitely. It's something that's always been part of like my life and routine. So
Yeah.
I think when I started working with you, it wasn't overwhelming or like I had to learn a whole new routine or anything. I think I was just more dedicated because I felt like I had an accountability aspect to it
Yeah.
where, okay, we're checking in 6 weeks. How am I doing? And I can't just be like, oh, I didn't do this for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there's really just being consistent. And we targeted in on like, I think the gut and the hormone were the biggest things,
Yeah.
which I think for women a lot of times is,
Yeah.
especially the hormone thing. There could be one
Totally.
tiny thing and it sets off so much and we don't
Right.
realize.
And it can stem from the gut too. So if you're
Yeah.
feeling like you have hormone concerns, test your gut first.
Mhm.
You mentioned that the 6-week coaching visit. I love
Mhm.
that you brought that up because I feel like that sets our practice apart.
Mhm.
We have that member model, but included in that relationship, we have the coaching visits, and that's
Yes.
intentional. So you do stay on track. So we can
Mhm.
troubleshoot, help you to get to your goal.
Mhm.
I think the coaching piece is a game changer.
It is. One, like I said, for the accountability, but
Yeah,
then two, because you have these checkpoints where it's not here, go home for 3 months, do this and come back.
right.
It's there's these checkpoints so you know and can adjust and say, like, this is working, this isn't. And we did a lot of that. There were
Yeah.
tweaks that we'd make or
It's a constant tweak.
yes,
It's never this
always.
is your plan and you can rock this plant till the end of the time. It's
Right.
this is what's working potentially
Mhm.
right now, or this is what we're going to try right now.
Mhm.
But there'll always be areas that we can
Yes.
tweak and get better.
Yeah. And it really depends on like what's going on in your life,
Yeah.
environmental factors, stress.
Yeah.
Stress is so huge on how it
Yeah.
affects
You're right.
our body. And,
You're right.
I had at that time personally, I was when we started working together, I was going through a lot on like a personal level with
Yeah.
my own life and had a lot of different stress stuff. And I know that was a factor.
Yeah.
Um, but I would say within again, I was being consistent. Probably 6 to 8 months, I really was feeling so much different. At that point, I was like transparently struggling with just like added weight that I was like, where did this come from? Like, I've
Yeah.
always been around the same weight in my entire life.
Yeah.
Suddenly had this like 10 pounds of sludge
Yeah.
feeling
Yeah.
on my body.
Yeah.
And for someone who eats pretty healthy, is active regularly, I was like, it's not moving. And it really had to do with all these little tiny things that I didn't have anything that was so drastically off that we
Yeah.
were like, "Oh my gosh." It was more just like, "We need to tweak this. We need to move this around."
Yeah.
Just these adjustments to make.
They are like little tweaks, though.
Yeah,
They
and it
really
makes a
are.
difference.
I know when you get it right, it really
Mhm,
can move the needle. And even if it's like a couple step forward, at least we're like making progress, and
mhm.
then you can kind of reassess and make changes again
Yeah,
from there.
mhm.
Cool. I love that. We need to do your labs again, though.
We
I feel
are.
like we're behind. I did
I
forget
think
your
you brought
test kit.
oh, shoot.
I know. I'm sorry. I'll go get them after this if you want me to.
Yeah, so I guess this is great to kind of share, but
Yeah.
you do your initial test, you do all these tweaks and things, and then
Yep.
obviously you need to retest
Yeah.
because you want to find out, okay,
Ideally,
are
we would
they
retest.
yeah,
Yeah.
like are they better? Is
Yeah.
something else worse? Is this offset? But like, so we did that. And I think generally we do about once a year. I kind of start the year off in January,
Yeah.
kind of see where things are at. Obviously, this last year has just been tumultuous for me from physical health standpoint, all these different things that have been in my body that aren't normally there as far as, surgery, pre
Yeah.
drugs, all the things, cortisone shots, steroids, those things that wreak havoc on our systems. And
Yeah.
so I'm really interested to see where
Where
things
you're
are
at
at.
right
A
now.
little nervous.
Yeah.
But no, nervous in a good way because like I'm like, all right, let's see what it is. Let's tackle it.
Yeah.
Get to the bottom of it. So again, I can continue feeling my best.
Before we dive into your experience with NAD, I'd love to hear more about your health journey in general. I know that holistic health has been a part of your life for a long time.
Yes, very long time.
Yeah.
Okay, this dates honestly, I think all the way back to college, but even pre that, because I, looking back now, know that certain symptoms I had growing up are definitely indicators of what I was experiencing in my adult life. But I guess I can start when I was in college. I went to school, didn't change anything in my routine, but had a slew of health things come up. And to make a long story kind of like short, started seeing different doctors, getting tests done, etc., and found out I had celiac disease. And I'm a person who likes to know the root cause, root issue, and not just band-aid things. So just eating like gluten-free or whatever
Yeah.
wasn't really an
Cutting
option for
it.
me. I was
Yeah.
like, what's really going on? So that deep dived me into really healing my gut. And that was when I was 21, 22-ish.
Okay.
And here I am 35. So that was like 13, 14-ish years ago now.
How did celiac present? What made you seek care?
I think what's interesting about celiac is it's so different
Yeah.
for
For everyone.
everyone, you know? So for me, I had debilitating migraines, really could not focus, a very foggy kind of brain, if you will. I also started to see digestive issues come up, but after when I was in college, I didn't have that, more in like middle and high school, which is interesting,
Okay.
and also had an extreme amount of weight gain like very quickly, and it wasn't normal since I was eating pretty much the same things I always had.
Okay. I feel like I know you now. It's been
Mhm.
so long.
Mhm.
Years. When did we
Mhm.
meet each other? Like 2021 maybe?
I think so, yeah.
So I know your wellness journey very well. I feel like it predates that. The way that you were raised and grew up in a household,
Mhm.
even as a young child, I feel like it was cultural within your family to look to food as medicine and
Mhm.
movement as medicine.
Mhm.
What was that like?
I love that you brought that up because it's so true. And I, again, like with the symptom thing, don't really realize like our family and how my parents raised us with eating and different things really did start from, like you said, my childhood.
Mm.
So I remember like my mom would not buy, the sugary cereals and those like Dunkaroos
Yeah.
and all those
All the
like
things that
junk
you wanted.
snacks, and you're going to school, and it was like I had to have a main part of my lunch, a fruit or vegetable, and then one snack, but it was like the extent of like popcorn and chips. And honestly, I'm grateful for that. I don't think I really ever missed out on those things. I did never grew up like wanting, like a little Debbie's or whatever.
So
So
you
it
didn't know any
definitely,
better. Like
no,
you didn't
I
know what you were
didn't.
missing.
Yeah, and even like breakfast growing up, my dad would make us eggs in the morning, bacon. Like we were having hearty, good, like protein packed breakfast. We weren't having like sugary cereals
Yeah.
and donuts and pastries and all that.
Yeah.
So I think my parents definitely instilled in us good
Early on.
food, like, even if it wasn't as extensive as it is today, but
Yeah.
we definitely had that.
I love that. I grew up on bagel bites and Kraft macaroni and cheese. We can all get there on our own time. Walk us through your recent journey because I know
Mhm,
that this past year has been really challenging for you more than ever. What made you really turn to functional medicine again in this recent
mhm.
past?
Yeah, the last year was definitely tumultuous, more so on, like, physical health things
Hmm.
versus, um, digestion or other things, but I think for me, when I turned 30, I had different symptoms kind of representing for me, and I really wanted to get to the root of them. And since I had gone through that process before, I'm very in tune with my body, intuitive, can read, things very well. And that kind of led me to pursuing functional medicine. And
Hmm.
that's how I found you.
Yeah.
And so when we started working together, I think I really was like, I need a deep dive into my gut and my hormones.
Yeah.
I know this, I know that's off, I know that's off, everything. And we did that deep dive to really start going, I think, deeper than I even had before,
Yeah.
but kind of going down that same path with a lot more into it.
Yeah, I feel like too, you're one of the only clients that came and started. I need to test my hormones. I need to test my
Hmm.
micronutrients. Like you knew exactly what you wanted to do, and I was just your guide for
Yeah,
that. How
that
did
sounds like
that
me.
how did that affect your business? Because I can
Hmm.
understand you not feeling your best
Hmm.
and you have to be front facing to your community. How did
Hmm.
that affect your influence online?
Honestly, going back from like 30 to now, I really don't think it affected it in the sense of me not being able to do my job. My
Hmm.
job allows me to share and talk about whatever. I really want, you
Mhm.
know? And I've always been open about like my health and like sharing different things. Like my audience knows that I'm more of like non-toxic and chemical free and
Yeah. That's why
you
they
know,
follow you.
yes, they do. That's a huge part of why they follow me
Mhm.
for kind of like those health things. So it was something that was always easy to weave into context of content.
Yeah.
And what am I sharing? The recipes, my active levels and different things like that. I wouldn't say I dive deep into like, "Hey, here's my gut test."
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
generally speaking, they're seeing like my patterns and all of that. Fast forward to the last year when I was really restricted physically with some different things I
Mhm.
was going on with my back and like structurally, that affected my business because I wasn't able to like function
Yeah.
every day. Where I had to really just disconnect and turn off and really allow myself the space and time that I needed to heal.
Yeah. Sometimes you just need to take a step back
Mhm.
to be able to move forward.
Mhm. And heal for real,
Yeah, and
right?
heal for real. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us about that healing time. Why did you have to really take a step back from your business?
Mhm. So my back, so I was structurally with actual bones. This goes back to again my early 20s, kind of like everything combusted then, I guess. But I had a couple slip discs and some different issues that over time compounded with some different structural issues I have. So I started to be in a ton of pain about a year and a half, about a little over a year ago now. And usually when these things would happen, it would be like 2 or 3 weeks and I would be back on my feet and fine. And this time it just was not that. It just kept getting progressively worse and worse and worse to where I couldn't even function or get out of bed or walk or stand because of the excruciating like level 100 out of, 10 pain. Um so I really had no choice but
Mhm.
to take the time off that I took off, because I, couldn't function, never mind, get online and work and film things and record and all of that. And so that was the first time I've ever done that too.
Mhm.
We talk about healing and all these things, and sometimes like the time off and disconnected. And again, I'm so grateful that I was
Yeah.
even able to do that because I
Yeah.
realized not everyone has that
You're
flexibility.
so right.
Um, but I've built my business in a way that allows me to be able to do that, and I
Mhm.
was fortunate enough to be able to do that in this last, year and the 6 months that I took. So, really my day-to-day was just nothing. Like, I was just existing and waiting for the end to come,
Yeah.
and it didn't really come. There was definitely things I had to do to get there.
I think it got bad fast too.
It
It
was
was
really bad
bad,
really
and then it just
fast.
kept getting worse
Yeah.
and worse and
Uh-huh.
worse. I
Yeah.
felt so bad for you. It
I
was a
felt bad for
journey.
me too.
But you've
Yeah.
been in the game for a long time, 14
Mhm.
years as an influencer. You've built your business to a place
Mhm.
where you could take the time that you needed to really
Mhm.
focus on yourself and your recovery.
Someone who wants to know answers, I had to be okay with the unknown in that and
Yeah.
release that.
Hmm.
And we talk, again, talking about healing, there was so much more than just physical
Yeah.
that was going on in this. It was emotional, mental, a spiritual. It was a very all encompassing journey where as I'm seeking all these answers physically, I'm also going
Peeling
through
back
this
all the
emotional
layers.
process. Yes,
Yeah.
and going inward. There was so much inward work that
Mhm.
went on and really learning to trust my intuition. Like there would be moments where I'd have to make split decisions about, a doctor or an appointment or this or that. And I really was like, what feels right? Yes, no, okay. And just do it,
Yeah. And you really have to trust yourself in making those
Yeah.
decisions too.
Yeah.
Just sit with like, okay, what is actually feeling good? What's feeling
Yeah.
aligned? Tell us about the emotional piece of that healing. Is there
Mhm.
anything specific that you can share with us?
Yeah. I love this question because I'm a very emotional,
Yeah.
like a deep person. And so for me, I think the biggest thing was having the time off of work and having the space in my brain to shut it off. I've never done that. Like my life is always about creating and
Mhm.
content and moving the needle forward, and so taking breaks is not something that really exists in like a long form sense. So for me, having that time off gave me the space that I needed to think.
Mm.
I was able to evaluate my life and really look at what do I really want to be doing? Do I
Yeah.
really want to wake up in 5 years and be doing the same thing I'm doing now? And the answer was no. And I kept getting met with these no's, but also was like, okay, so then what? And I had to be okay again with the unknown of not knowing what was next, but being honest with no, right now. So for me, that was definitely an emotional process because you're kind of undoing all these layers of like who you see yourself as. Also like in some ways grieving this like body that in like what
And like who
like
you thought
yeah,
that you were.
and living in it, I'm like, what
Yeah.
am I living in? Like,
Yeah.
where did this body come from? And being mad or
Yeah.
sad or whatever of existing. And I'm like, why does this happen to me? Why can't it happen to so and so? But obviously, we know that everything happens for or to us for a purpose. And
Mhm.
most people who know me know that there's nothing I go through that I don't use for something better or for a purpose. Like
Yeah.
I'm going to go through something and get everything I can out of it, even if I hit rock bottom and rock bottom again.
Yeah.
And that's definitely what happens.
I mean, what a beautiful silver lining, though,
Yeah.
to such a traumatic time. It really gave
Mhm.
you an opportunity to reevaluate, like, how
Yeah.
do you see yourself in the future and what do you want for yourself in your career?
Mhm.
And maybe you wouldn't have had that time to reflect in the way that you did without that experience.
Absolutely not. I definitely wouldn't have. I actually was just at lunch with a friend before coming here to
Yeah.
record. And what I told her about that time was my body was literally going through a restructure, like physically, where we were and still are actively working to realign my spine and my
Hmm.
bones and all these things. But also, I was going through an emotional and like mental and just career and life and everything restructure as well. Like
Yeah.
it was kind of like I hit the reset button,
Yeah.
like there
Yeah.
was a very stark point that I had to come to be able to turn the corner and, like, move forward in my life now.
Yeah.
Um, and it was definitely a turning point.
Yeah.
Like, it was a restructuring of
On like
me in
so
a
many
lot of
planes
ways.
in your
Yeah.
life, though,
Yeah.
like with your career, physical, emotional. So you did pursue a surgery.
I did.
Tell us about that process
Mhm.
and what it was like in the recovery period.
Yeah. Um, Honestly, I think the way the surgery happened was the best way that it could have happened. It was so fast. But I had gotten to a place where I was making progress with all of the different methods that we were doing with
Yep.
my back and brace. I ended up having a brace and all these different things. And I had been in a period of maybe 3 or 4 weeks where my pain had drastically decreased. I was able to walk around. I was kind of getting a little bit more mobile and things. And I was kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And then all of a sudden, it just came crashing back down, literally night and day. One day I was fine, the next day I couldn't move again, like horrible, horrible pain back. And I'm like, okay, no, like we've
Yeah.
got to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
So I went in to see my specialist, who I love their team. They're
Mhm.
amazing. And I asked him, I was like, listen, do you have a
What's next
surgeon?
for me?
Yeah, like, do
Yeah.
you have a surgeon?
Yeah.
And he was like, we do. And we don't off the bat recommend people to him because a lot of times, surgery, that's a big deal,
Yeah, it is a big deal.
especially when you're talking about your spine.
Yeah.
Um, but I knew in my heart that it was really kind of the way to go.
Yeah.
And I got in touch with a surgeon, and long story short, it was within 2 weeks I was on the operating table. They had an opening, things worked. It was like every
All
star aligned in
fine.
my favor.
Yeah.
And that's where going back to what I said before about making split decisions, I really had to be so in touch with my intuition and my gut. And if I didn't have that time of being really disconnected from everything and knowing and learning what that really was without all the noise, I wouldn't have been able to move as quickly through those decisions as I would have probably even 6 months before.
Yeah.
And so I booked the surgery and I was like, I'm doing this. And I honestly didn't even really think about the surgery or even maybe understand the magnitude of it, I think, until after.
What
Um,
just happened?
yeah. I think, like people around me, my mom, my boyfriend, family, whatever, I think they understood it and you like
Yeah.
more than I did. And
Yeah.
even understanding like what anesthesia really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm
You didn't even
glad
know
I
what you were
didn't.
signing yourself
No,
up
I
for.
really didn't. And
You
I'm
just wanted to
glad.
be pain free.
Yeah. I'm glad I didn't know.
Mm.
I'm glad that I didn't know until after.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It was a journey for sure. So after the surgery, I
Mhm.
can imagine you feeling ready to recommit to
Mhm.
your health practices that you were unable to do before.
Mhm.
What were some of the first interventions that you started to bring back into your day
Mhm.
to day after that? Because I know that it
Yeah,
was a slow process
it
to get
was.
back to feeling like yourself.
Yeah. So my surgery was in May. Let's see,
Okay.
it's January. So
Mhm.
6, 7 months ago, 7 months, I guess.
Yep.
Wow, that's crazy to
Wow.
think
I
about.
know.
I Okay, so first, I reacted really bad to the anesthesia.
Yep.
It really, really rocked me. I have a sensitive system, as we've kind of established,
Yeah.
very natural, like, don't ever medicate, don't
Yeah.
even do like ibuprofen, so all these drugs being suddenly shoved into me, I think was a shock
Yeah.
to
Your
my
system.
system. That was kind of, I think, our first thing that we tackled of like, how do I detox? How do I
Right.
really move this through me? And
Yeah.
that's what we worked on probably through summer, I would
Yeah.
say, like June to maybe August or so,
Mhm.
detoxing.
A lot of glutathione.
Yeah,
Yeah.
glutathione, what is it? Dismusin, or was it some
Mhm.
supplement? I can see
I
it in my
can't think of
cabinet
it
and I
right now.
can't think of
You were
the
doing apopectin for a while, right? The binder,
Yes. I also did, um
amino acids, electrolytes, I mean, all the foundational stuff, but
yes, all that foundational supplemental
yeah.
stuff I was doing, but then we did more heavy detoxer stuff.
Yep.
I was doing castor oil
Oh,
liver
yeah.
packs.
That's right.
This is really jogging my memory
Yeah.
because my memory was also so shot through
Well,
all
it's a
this.
trauma
It
for
is.
you, so
Yes.
it's gonna come back in
Yes.
little snippets over time.
Yeah, and that is also an
Mhm.
interesting thing I found where, like,
Mhm.
memory just, like,
It'll pr
gone.
Your body will brain will protect yourself, and
Mhm.
it will be hard to recall some of those events, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
So I'm pretty consistent too when I do these things.
Yeah.
Like, I am a dedicated, like, person. If I do something, I'm doing it
Yeah.
150%. So
Definitely.
and these were things that I'm like, I have to do these things to get back to,
Yep.
ground zero and then be able to move on to the next step. So I really was consistent with all that through the summer and then didn't really start feeling like myself in my own body, honestly, until August, which was a very interesting process and experience. Your activity is limited. There's all these different time frames they put on like stuff.
Mm.
But I also knew and could feel that even though I felt a little bit more normal in my body, things were not okay. Like there was so much inflammation.
Yeah.
I was having like digestive stuff. Like there was just so much that had
Symptoms have
came up.
flared again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And probably due to like the nervous system trauma, like we're
Yeah.
saying with my back, but then also all of those like drugs, like anesthesia can stay in your system. Was it 6 to 9 months after?
Honestly, I'm not even clear on that, but I do know that it's a long time.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a long time. So it takes a while to
it
get all
does.
that out and
Yeah,
really just bring all the inflammation and stuff down.
absolutely.
So in August, I think was when I was like, okay, feeling a little bit better, more
Mhm.
strong, like physically, but things are not totally not
Yeah.
normal.
I remember you really leaning into food again too. I can recall you posting a lot about your meals.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I remember you calling out like certain pieces of the plate in terms of like how they were supporting you at that
Yes.
time.
Yes.
I think that's such a cool thing to do because people don't always look to food as medicine. And
Mhm.
that was one of the things that you really leaned in on, even
Yeah.
before the supplements. Supplements are
Yes.
helpful,
Mhm.
but as such, they're supplementing your food. And you really did take that seriously out the
Yeah.
gate.
Yeah, I definitely did. I really wanted to nourish my body, support
Hmm.
my body in healing, getting like good nutrients. And so I was like shopping from the local farms and getting like good quality proteins and meats, making
Yep.
sure I was fueling my body so that it could
Recover.
heal and recover.
Yeah.
Yeah. And really get strength back. I wasn't walking
Yeah.
for 9 months. And so
It's a
the
long
amount of
time.
mobility and just basic strength that I lost in my body was very drastic, and
Yeah.
I didn't even realize how much till I started moving again because I was like, "Oh my gosh, like,
Yeah.
it's hard." Like, walking, I couldn't I
Zapped
used to
you.
walk 4 miles and
Yeah.
now it was like half a mile and I was like dead.
So, realizing your limitations at that point,
Mhm.
energy is not as great as it should.
Mhm.
What initially sparked your interest in NAD?
I think a couple things. Like, we had discussed it briefly in, like, other appointments in the past, but I
Yeah.
don't think it was ever really
I was kind of scared of it, honestly. Like, I wanted to do it and I didn't, and we were talking about it casually.
Yeah. It's one of those things that, like, you can hear about something a million times, but until you are ready for it or need it,
Yeah.
like, you don't even think about it, and then you suddenly have the light bulb moment, and so, I know it's been on, like, TikTok, and there's that
Yeah.
clip of, like, Hailey Bieber
Yeah.
talking, and I think I had seen different things, and I really was looking a lot into what are other modalities and things that I can do to support myself in my
Mhm.
healing,
Mhm.
and so, I had discovered I shouldn't say discovered. I'd heard more about it, I think, at all the right moments.
Yeah.
And so, was like, "Should I do this?" And you guys were kind of promoting it a little
Yeah.
bit more at the clinic, and I was like, "I have nothing to lose." And once I really started to learn about what NAD actually did,
Yeah.
because I think there's so many different types of therapies and IV therapies and peptides and things out there, and you hear the pros and the cons and don't do this and don't do that and all this, and it's really important to educate yourself
Yeah, definitely.
and know what's right for you.
Yep.
Um,
And work with somebody that can help you make those
yes,
decisions too.
Dr. Meg.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. Hello. Here.
Yeah,
So before we get into your experience with NAD,
yeah.
for those that don't know, can we take a step back and talk about NAD and
Yeah,
what
I
it
would love to.
does?
I love talking about this
I
stuff.
feel like you can speak to it better than I can at this point. Why don't you give your overview of
Okay.
what it is and then I'll chime in with mine.
Yeah. Okay. So NAD, and this is kind of the what really was my spark into being like, yes, I need that.
Hmm.
So NAD is something that naturally occurs in our bodies. We have it, and as we age around our early 20s, it starts to decrease. Our supply, if you will, in our body starts to decrease.
Yes.
And so it's a substance in your body that clears out the old mitochondria in your cells.
Hmm.
And so when it does that, your cells can function at their optimal state. Well, as you age, you have less and less NAD, which means you have less and less cells that are operating at their prime. And so you start feeling old. Like all the symptoms
Absolutely.
of being old, okay? Run
Fatigue.
down, fatigue, you're tired,
Yep.
like all
Brain
these things.
fog.
Yeah. And so you can, amazingly enough, supplement with NAD to essentially feel your best, get good energy, feel like rested where you don't have that brain foggy feeling or whatever. And I started to look into NAD after my surgery because I was like, I have so much inflammation, cells that are like probably frazzled and so damaged and everything from this whole journey and then surgery and blah blah blah. What can I do to get my cells feeling amazing again? Because I want to feel amazing again.
Yeah.
And that's what really prompted me to move into NAD therapy. Um, and thankfully, you guys have NAD therapy.
Yeah.
So I was like, Meg, help.
And at the time I was getting into it too. I was
Yes.
starting infusing and feeling
Yes.
really good. It's
Mhm.
definitely good, clean energy is how
Oh,
I describe it. You
it is
feel
the
like
best.
yourself on your best day, but 10x. Like the
Yes.
day that I get it and the day after, I feel like I can
Hmm.
truly save the world. It's
Hmm.
crazy.
Yes. I
I
am
love it.
like a woman on a mission. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like I can do
Clean the whole
anything.
house,
Yes.
get your life together.
Yes, and it's you are so focused
Yeah,
too. It's really hard to explain what it feels like
I
after you
know.
get an NAD drip
You're right.
until you do it.
Yeah.
So, just everyone go
Just
do it.
everyone go do it. Let's see if we can say the word NAD. So NAD, I feel like is the acronym, right?
Mhm.
Or the shortcut. The entire word, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Mhm.
But you pretty much summed it up. It's a molecule essential for life, involved in every cell in your body, which you mentioned, helping to convert the food we eat into the energy we need to function. So it powers, as you mentioned, your mitochondria, powerhouse of the cell that produces
Mhm.
ATP energy. So you're just
Mhm.
going to behave and function at your optimal
Yeah.
state. You mentioned that NAD levels decline as we age. So when you're stressed, or you have poor health habits, you'll see lower NAD levels. And we can boost NAD through infusions or
Mhm.
subcutaneous injections. There are supplements that you can take that are the precursors to NAD, but the most effective way to boost your stores is through infusions and injections.
Mhm.
So, by replenishing NAD, you can feel more energized, enhance mental clarity and focus, which you mentioned. I think that's
Mhm.
probably like the best benefit that I reap
Yeah.
is just feeling super like laser
Mhm.
focused and also like clear in communication. I find
Yes.
that is what comes through initially for me. very supported by the science to be anti-aging, and it does help to improve your recovery time and your resilience, which
Mhm.
is ultimately what brought you to the therapy.
Yeah, for sure. I was like, I have no energy. I feel like I can't function every day. You know, I would do one thing and crash. And, of course I had to build up my endurance and stuff, but even after I had done that in several months, I was like, something still doesn't feel right. And really, I think, like you said, the cells, they needed a good
Heat
clear
it
out.
up.
Yeah. They
Yeah.
were like, we need all the NAD. And so I started doing the IVs. I think
Yep.
I was doing one a week to
Yep.
start. And that was transformational. Like after the first one, I was like, I'm hooked. I want to do this. It is definitely a commitment though. Like
Yeah, it
I
is.
think
And
it's
it's
something
pricey.
that
It's
it's
not for
pricey.
everybody.
It's a time commitment.
Yeah.
Um, so but also like I'm again somebody that commits to
Yeah.
something 150% when I do it. And I knew that overall it was going to benefit me in so many ways. And
Yeah.
even after one time I knew that. So
Did you have an outcome in the first time? Did you
yes,
feel you did? You experienced
I did.
positive
I was like,
benefits?
"Holy cow, this stuff is amazing. I haven't had this much energy since I was like 15."
Yeah. Oh my God, that's amazing. Well,
Energizer bunny.
I think there's some people too. Well, we talked about the clinic too, trying to advocate for this loading dose, which you
Mhm.
did more or less. You were very consistent in the beginning,
Mhm.
getting the infusions week to week. Now you're trying to experience the subcutaneous pathway.
Yes.
Tell us about that. How's that
Okay.
different?
So, yeah, I feel like it is definitely different. I did the injections for 3 months, I think, before we moved to sub-Q.
Yep.
Um, I feel like it was almost kind of an experiment
Yeah, it is.
where yeah, we had to find the right dose for me.
Hmm.
'Cause at first I'm like, I'm not feeling
Right.
anything, with the lower, injection amount. Cause obviously when you sit and get an IV, we're doing like a 250 or a 500 bag,
Yeah.
milligrams or whatever it is.
Yep.
That's how you,
Milligrams.
yeah.
Yep.
So when you go home and you're doing a sub Q and you go down to 25, like it's
It's a
basically a
baby dose.
drop
Yeah.
of water,
It's a
a tiny
microdose.
little,
Yeah.
yeah. So I wasn't really feeling much to start and we kind of had to play with that and then also see how your body responds. So kind of was like the guinea pig for
Yeah,
all of
you
you,
were.
guinea pigging it here.
Yeah.
But we kind of landed on the right dose for me where I was feeling like the boost every day.
Yeah.
And um I still think it's super beneficial to do the IV therapy. I think I would prefer that, but just
Yeah.
lifestyle wise,
It's hard to get
it's
down here.
it is. It's
Yeah,
hard to get in. It takes a bit. Like I
it
said, it's
does.
not just like a 10-minute thing. You have a time commitment. And so if you can tag team the two, I think that would be like my most preferred method of maybe doing the IV bag every other week or
Yep.
once a month or something, and then supplementing with the sub Q like in between
Absolutely.
to kind of just keep the supply. Really, the
Yeah.
goal is you're keeping,
Maintaining.
yeah, the
Yeah.
level of NAD up in your body so
Mhm.
your cells can just always be at their optimal prime
Yep.
instead of having peak and a crash and a
Yeah.
peak and a crash. You don't ever want to get back into that crash point.
So it's almost like if sunny day scenario, if you could pursue the loading dose over the shortest period of time,
Mhm.
we recommend 1,500 milligrams at the clinic, maybe between 4 to 7 days, and then go sub Q.
Yes.
Okay.
100%.
I feel like too something that we should talk about is the side effects because that is what ultimately kept me
Mhm.
from trying. I was terrified of the side effects for a long time,
Yeah.
and they're not terrible. It is uncomfortable, but
Mhm.
tell us about your experience and the side
Yeah.
effects that you had.
Yeah. I should preface this with I'm a very tough person.
You have a high pain
I have a
tolerance,
very high
obviously.
tolerance for
Yeah,
everything. I have a very high pain tolerance, yes. And so for me, anything that's like, ooh, I feel a little queasy is like I'm literally like, whatever, I don't
it's
care.
fine. Yeah.
So it's all relative.
Mhm.
However, it really is not that bad. I've talked with people who are like, oh my God, the symptoms must be awful. And I'm like, it's really not. Like,
Yeah.
we're all okay here,
Yeah. Yeah.
But basically, what you feel, the best way I can explain it is during the drip when you do the IV. And this all depends on how fast you open the IV bag,
Yeah.
right?
I open
So,
that.
yeah, I'm like,
I'm
open
a
it up.
yeah, let's get this done
Let's
as soon
go.
as
Let's
possible.
rock and
Yeah.
roll. Um, I definitely you feel this kind of heaviness in your body where your body physically feels heavy when you're sitting in the chair. Not like something is on top of you heavy, but it's almost internally where you feel heavy. I
Your
don't
legs are
know.
heavy. I feel like
Yeah.
my jaw gets heavy. Like, I feel like I got, like,
My
chapters, like,
chest,
still
shoulder,
there.
you
Yeah.
kind of just feel weighted.
Yep.
I also just feel a little queasy, kind of not like nausea queasy. It's a different type of queasy. Almost like your stomach has a tornado in it, but it
Yeah.
doesn't
It kinda, like,
feel.
flops a little bit,
Yeah.
and then you're like, "Am I hungry? Am I nauseous?
Yes,
Am
that's a
I
great way to
gonna
explain it.
throw up? I'm not sure."
Yeah, but it's not very, very intense where you're
Yeah.
like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna pass out," or like, it's
It's
nothing like
uncomfortable.
having a stomach bug or something. Like,
Yeah.
it's nothing like that. It's just uncomfortable,
Yeah.
but again, it's how fast you open the IV bag,
Yeah.
so I kind of do it in spurts. This is
Me
like my
too.
hack,
We
okay?
pulse it. Okay, let's hear it.
Let's hear it. So, my hack is sit down, kind of like get, into it for like a 10 minutes, open the bag and just let it go and get kind of through a little bit. And then when you feel like, okay, I really need a break from this, close it back up a little bit,
Slow it
kind of like
down.
slow it down. Yeah. And then same thing, open it up a little bit. So it just moves it along faster. I've
Yeah.
gotten down to about an hour and 15 from start to finish. And
It's impressive.
thanks. But you just power through, like, it's
Yeah.
not bad, you're not gonna, like, pass out, you're not throwing up, like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
not like you are it's not
Dying.
yeah, you're not
You're
dying,
fine.
like, it's
Yeah.
fine. So and you have total control over, like, how to open and close the
Yeah.
IV bag if you want it more or less. So you find, like, a good medium and just, like, sit, read a book, whatever, listen to a podcast,
Yeah.
listen to this podcast.
Yeah, this podcast. You did find too, though, you had a hack early on that if you had a protein-rich meal that you
Mhm.
forgot to mention.
And then another hack, which this is before you even come in for your NAD appointment. And this is purely coincidental that I discovered this. But my first appointment, I came in, I was like so rushing around, flustered that day. I was like coming from an early car service appointment, hadn't had breakfast, like just so frazzled and
Yeah,
everything, hadn't eaten,
we've
had
all been
like a
there.
coffee, which
Yeah.
is not me, by the way.
Yeah.
I am not a coffee before eat person. Let's establish that. Um, but that's all I had that day. Came in, got my NAD, and it definitely was rocking me a lot, and I was like, "Whoa, this, whatever." The second time, I actually did, like, a really full normal routine for me, which is a heavy protein breakfast, really, like, really heavy on the protein. I do, like, 3 eggs, turkey bacon or turkey sausage or something, and then maybe berries, and then I have my greens with armra, colostrum, and then a matcha with collagen. So like I'm getting a lot of nutrients right in my body. I'm drinking electrolytes right when I wake up. I was fueled. Came in for my appointment and I was like, wow, this is way easier than I remember.
Yeah.
But I realized it was because I had fueled my body correctly.
Yeah. Protein,
So
baby.
yeah. And we all know to do this.
Yeah.
And then we just are like crashing
Don't.
sometimes and
Yeah.
don't. But I think that was just a really good indication that if we fuel our body properly, like a situation like this, like I felt totally differently. So I would really recommend coming in on a full stomach, have a good high protein, be hydrated before you come in, and you're gonna have a totally different experience than if you didn't,
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds like less side effects.
for sure. They were more minimal. Like,
Yeah, manageable.
yeah,
And they are. We pre-treat too. We can give Zofran and we give Toradol, pain medication and anti-nausea medication. We'll keep you comfortable.
I
But I feel
decline
like
all of that.
I do too, actually. I did initially, and it takes the edge off. So if you're
Yeah.
feeling like you want some support, we can help you with that in the clinic. But
Hmm.
once you know what you're getting yourself into, it's almost like you don't need it. You'll
No.
be okay. You
And
can
when you
manage
know the
it.
benefits after,
Yeah.
you're like,
And the side effects stop for most of us. I have maybe a handful of patients that struggle with side effects after, depending on the dose that we give. But typically, I would say that the side effects stop almost immediately. Once the drip stops, your side effects stop.
yeah,
Is
or if
that
you
your
lower
experience? Yeah.
the flow of the bag,
Yeah.
like your side effects are basically over. It's not like
Yeah.
something that's long going where you're feeling like horrible the rest of the day. You walk
Yeah.
out and you're like, "Okay, I'm gonna run home instead
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
drive."
Exactly. I feel like my side effects too are different every time. It's like a
Hmm.
little unpredictable. Sometimes I have a little bit more nausea and more heaviness. And then today when I did it, I was like, my eye was dripping, my nose was
Mm.
post nasal drip in the back. I had
Mhm.
like a histamine response. So it's interesting that you don't really know what you're getting.
I think Probably for women too, where we're at on our
Yeah,
cycle, because
totally.
our bodies are totally equipped differently of what we're expounding
100%.
or,
Yeah.
all of that in our cycle. So that's probably a factor too. That's not something I ever really paid attention to. I just was like, I'm gonna make sure I eat every time before from now on because I felt really good when I did that. I noticed the benefits right away. I don't think with NAD it's something that, a lot of times with supplements, let me back it up a second. A lot of
Yeah.
times with supplements, you are
Time
like,
limit.
oh, 6, 8 weeks, 12
Yeah.
weeks, 3 months, whatever. And you're like, oh, I'm not going to feel like a difference. With NAD, you feel a difference when you leave the office.
Yeah,
I
100%.
remember the first time I did my IB, I went home and I could probably scroll back in our text and find this,
Yeah.
but I was literally on a rampage in my home
Zoom
doing
in
things that I had
all
not
around.
done in a long time. Just was more motivated and had more energy. I wasn't lethargic. I didn't wanna, like, rot on the couch, and especially for me coming off of everything that I
Yeah.
was with my back and, like, having this year of basically nothing, I was really looking for my spark to come back, if you will.
Yeah.
Um, I'm a very busy, motivated, like, person who has a full life, and so for me, I felt like I was dragging in my life, and when I started with NAD, it was like I was getting the sparkle and the spark back into my daily routine, and I was like, "I need to keep doing this because I haven't felt this good in so long." I was sleeping really well. My energy level wasn't just like a quick high from eating or like, that 1 p.m. coffee where you feel the crash 2 hours later. It was very sustained. And this was also because I was consistent with it. So,
Right.
like, I saw the benefits right after the first time. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to keep doing this because I feel so good. So, I was back in the next week and back in the next week to keep again, those NAD levels high and in my body and like optimal and prime for my cells. And I saw the benefits from that.
Immediately, it sounds
Mhm.
like, and
Mhm.
more long term. I feel like for me,
Mm.
I have better periods. I have
Mm.
more they're not my periods aren't irregular, but now they're, like, immediate, on
Mhm.
time, they're comfortable. I think that they are shorter. I also feel like I have my mom looks young. I have genes that my parents look young, but more than ever recently, I'm
Yeah.
getting comments on, "You look so young, you look so young," and
Yeah.
I'm like, "It's the NAD,
Yeah.
guys. I've been
No,
doing
it
it for, like, a
really
year
is.
now."
Your skin, like after the NAD, I remember I'd look in the mirror and be like, oh
Yeah,
my
you
God, my
glow.
skin looks like 5-year-old skin.
Yeah,
Like it's glass.
yeah,
They talk about glass skin. That's a
yeah,
huge thing right now on
yeah,
TikTok and
yeah,
everything. Okay, TikTokers, we need
yeah,
to be on our NAD game. That's how you really get the glass skin. No, it
yeah,
really is. I saw a huge difference with my skin, just the texture. It looked hydrated,
mhm,
that wrinkly kind of like tired look in your face, which I had for sure over the
yeah,
last year. I was so
depleted.
depleted of everything.
Mhm.
So that it just like gave me like color back into my face, my skin tone, just the glow.
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously, this has impacted you hugely.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us how it has influenced you to run your business. Has it influenced you
Mm-hmm.
to change anything in your routine or
Mm-hmm.
anything that you're doing with your work?
So when I was going through all that with my back, I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier. I had to take the time off because I
Mhm.
physically couldn't work. So I basically did not work from last December 2023 all the way through the beginning of July 2024. In July, I started to kind of get back into things, but it was just like a struggle. And then, like we mentioned, I started the NAD. I think it was either the end of August or like beginning of September,
Mhm.
around that time. And this is approaching Q4 for me is like the big time of year. It's like, this is where it's like
Holiday.
our Super Bowl in
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
influencer world or creator world. And I really, I was like keeping myself above float or whatever the saying is
Yeah.
for July, August, or whatever. But I was again struggling.
Yeah.
And so with the NAD, it really gave me like the energy, the focus that I needed to like approach this really busy time of year.
Mhm.
You know, my business is so multifaceted. Every day looks different. Some days I'm shooting, some days I'm behind the computer all day, some days I'm on calls all day. Like some days it's all of the above, some days it's editing. Like there's so much different things going on. It's very fast paced. There's a lot of components. And so I really needed to be focused and zeroed in. And definitely the NAD helped me with that. because I saw such a shift in like September, October. I think even my
Yeah.
followers like
Yeah.
would probably say that they even saw the
Yeah.
shift, you know, like
Tell us,
there.
guys. Let
Yeah.
us know.
Well, I mean, I can already say, like, I
Yeah.
did get messages where people are like, you know, "It's so good to
What are
see,
you
like, you
doing?
back here
Yeah.
and, like, you're glowing or you're it's so good to see, like, you moving again," and whatever, and I really started to get my energy back, like, my spark back. I was able to get back on my walks and started, like, moving my body and working out all around this time, but it's because I felt like I could finally do it.
Yeah. I feel like that is so relatable though. We've all been
Mhm.
at that point of feeling like we're running on fumes. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And doing the bare minimum to kind of like keep our head above the water.
Yeah.
What advice would you give someone on the fence about trying NAD?
I would honestly say, like, you have nothing to lose.
Fair.
Like, you really don't. Just try it. If you have the means and the time to do it, it's definitely something that you should commit to because here's the fact of the matter is we are all aging. We are
Yeah.
all getting older. All of us are losing NAD as we speak.
Rapidly.
Our levels are depleting. So
You're so
that
right.
means we need to supplement with it. It's like the same thing as, you know, if your vitamin D is low, you take a
Yeah.
supplement. If your, you know, magnesium is low, you take a like we're always supplementing with something when we need it. And
Mhm.
like NAD is something that we always need more of. And if it can help us age, we're all going to still age.
Yeah.
It's not like you're going to be young forever, but it's
Totally.
something that can aid in the process and keep you feeling and operating at your prime. It's so worth it.
It is so worth it. I'm an advocate. I'm NAD's number one fan.
I'm number 2.
NAD has been a game changer for me. It's helped me to feel more energized and clear headed, which makes
Mm.
a huge difference in my personal and professional life. Obviously, I highly recommend. Marissa, what are your closing thoughts on NAD?
My closing thoughts are I wish I would have started it sooner. However, I'm also just grateful that I found it when I did. It's definitely something that's going to be a constant in my wellness routine and my support of my own body. And my other thought is like, just follow your intuition on things. You know, if you're listening and you're kind of feeling that prick or, oh, whatever, just do it.
Yeah, just
Just go
try
for
it.
it. Don't
Yeah.
hesitate. The more we hesitate, the only person that suffers from that is ourselves. So, like, just do it.
Yeah, I love that.
Hmm.
So, if you're curious about NAD and you'd like to feel more energized and focused, we'd love to guide you. Book a consultation at Holistic Health Co. to learn more. Before we wrap up, Marissa, I'd like to play a quick game of this or that. I'll give you two
Okay.
options
Okay.
and
Fun.
you tell me your pick.
All right.
Okay.
Let's do it.
They're more Holistic Health Code branded, so wellness,
Okay.
business, and some random ones.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. Coffee or matcha?
Matcha.
Start early or work late?
Ugh, work late.
Sauna or cold plunge?
Sauna, 1,000,000%.
Me too. Protein shake or green juice?
Ugh, not a huge fan of either, but probably protein shake.
Okay, fair. Power nap or a quick workout?
Workout,
Impact or income?
impact,
Meeting or email?
definitely a meeting.
Call or text?
Ooh,
You're a caller.
I
You
am
call.
you know what? I was gonna say, I think I have to say I'm a caller.
Yeah, you call.
And if I'm not a caller, I'm voice noting, which is
Yeah.
basically a call. So we're a caller.
One-on-one or group hangs?
One-on-one.
Work from home or office energy?
Home.
A night in or out with the girls?
I currently loving a night out, but I
Yeah.
think it's because I didn't have them for so long that I just, like, love a good night out.
Dinner or brunch?
Dinner.
Love it. That's it.